Bucs fans, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are off to a very hot start in the preseason. They have kicked off the preseason now at 2-0 after their victory against the Pittsburgh Steelers. I'm going to give you guys my game reaction, my winners and losers from game number 2. Also, we're just 3 weeks away from the kickoff of the regular season. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers are going to be on the road against the Atlanta Falcons. It's going to be an NFC South division rivalry game. Really exciting football there. I'm going to give you guys all the information you need to know to be ready for the start of the season for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers with a 2025 season preview. Additionally, ESPN threw out a wild trade proposal that includes Micah Parsons landing with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And spoiler alert, this wild trade proposal includes Bucky Irving headed to Dallas. I'm going to give you guys my reaction on that wild trade proposal. And lastly, Jason Licht, recently with a story in The Atlantic, revealed a lot of juicy details about some of his past mistakes. And he revealed that if he was to go back in time, he would not draft Devin White. We'll talk about that. All that and more on this episode of Fear the Bay. Bucs fans, welcome back to another episode of Fear the Bay. I'm your host, Danny Morales, and like I said in the opening, the Buccaneers are off to a very hot start, 2-0, coming off their 17-14 victory over the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, for the most part, the starters played, but with the exception of Mike Evans, veteran Mike Evans, I don't think anybody wants to see him out there. He's ready. He doesn't need any more preseason reps like Emeka Egbuka has said it last week. But this guy, he's ready. Keep him on the sidelines. Make sure he doesn't get injured at all before week number 1. Put him in bubble wrap. Lavonte David, same thing. Veteran. Got the night off also. You won't see him throughout the preseason here. You probably won't see most of the starters also, or any of the starters next week in week 3. But also Baker Mayfield wasn't out there. So those were the main 3 exceptions for starters. Baker Mayfield, he was planned to play in this game. The plan was originally coming in that Baker Mayfield was going to play in this week 2 matchup against the Pittsburgh Steelers. Todd Bowles decided to pull him out to make sure he didn't start the game after a very successful and effective joint practice against the Pittsburgh Steelers. So last week, the Buccaneers had a joint practice with the Tennessee Titans, go on to win that game. And then this week, they had a joint practice with Aaron Rodgers, DK Metcalf, Jalen Ramsey, and the Pittsburgh Steelers, led by Mike Tomlin. And he did so good that Todd Bowles was like, hey, we're going to keep you out of this game. You don't need to show us anymore. We know that you're ready for week number 1. So again, Mike Evans, Lavonte David, Baker Mayfield were out. The rest of the starters, for the most part, they were healthy. They were in. In place of Baker Mayfield, you had Teddy Bridgewater starting at quarterback. Last week, it was Kyle Trask. This week, it is Teddy Bridgewater was. So Teddy Bridgewater, for the most part, did pretty good. There was a few things I didn't like. When you watch Teddy Bridgewater also, one thing that doesn't stand out at all is obviously his arm strength. He doesn't necessarily have that tight arm strength, doesn't throw with, a nice zip on it, pretty strong passes. But what he lacks in arm strength, he makes up for with accuracy. And he had 2 really nice touch passes for touchdowns, one to Bucky Irving. So Bucky Irving, the Buccaneers came out 11 personnel, empty set. So just 5 wide, 1 tight end, 1 running back. And at the end on the bottom right of your screen, you see Bucky Irving out there lining up as an outside receiver. He goes in. Teddy Bridgewater throws a nice touch pass. He's able to catch it over his defender. Really nice there. Later on in the game, Emeka Egbuka is working his defender also. This is in the red zone. And Teddy Bridgewater hits him with a absolute perfect dime, perfect pass, touch pass in the back end of the end zone. Emeka Egbuka gets his first receiving touchdown in preseason, but he gets his first NFL touchdown of his career. I remember him saying last week after the game that he was a bit anxious heading into the game, but it wore off pretty quickly. But it's good to see the young, promising rookie get a nice touchdown, his first touchdown in the NFL. So it's good to see there. So Teddy Bridgewater went 6 for 11. He had 85 yards passing, and he had 2 touchdowns, the 2 touchdowns we just talked about, for an 119.3 passer rating. So he did really, really nice there. He had a really nice game. Kyle Trask, who started last week, didn't have necessarily a really nice game. I'm going to talk about him later on when we talk about our winners and losers for week 2. One thing that I didn't like, going back real quick to Teddy Bridgewater, is he threw pretty early on in the game, he threw a really high pass to Jalen McMillan, Luckily, Jalen McMillan was surprised, like he just leaped in the air, grabbed the ball, came down. But when he came down, he fell pretty awkwardly on like his back, neck area around there. Looked really scary. He was on the ground for a few seconds there. Trainers had to come out. It looked like it was going to be a really, really bad injury. Now, we don't still know the severity of that injury, but Joe Bucs fan. So after the game, when the Buccaneers players were walking back into the locker room, Rick Stroud, Joe Bucs fan, posted a video of Jalen McMillan walking into the locker room wearing a neck brace. It's never good to see a player in a neck brace, of course, and this definitely wasn't good. You know, you're hoping it's precautionary. You're hoping the Buccaneers are just taking every single precaution that they possibly can to make sure that Jalen McMillan, you know, just being very safe to make sure, you know, he's ready for week number 1. We'll see as time progresses exactly of the severity of this injury. But Joe Bucs fan, he states that he believes that it's a sprained neck for Jalen McMillan. And he heard Jalen McMillan telling this pretty loudly to other Buccaneers players headed to the locker room also. So I don't know the time length for a sprained neck, and we don't know the severity of the sprained neck injury. You know, I'm just thankful that he was able to get up on his own. So he falls really awkwardly, is able to get up on his own. So you can like possibly categorize that as a hospital ball thrown by Teddy Bridgewater, really high, just floated in the air there. Like Jalen McMillan he has amazing athleticism, was able to leap up, grab the ball. When he's coming down, he got hit in the back, falls on his upper back, you know, like a neck area, really bad there. But again, able to get up on his own, able to walk off to the sideline on his own, was wearing a neck brace. So we'll continue to check in and see, is he going to be ready for week 1? Because remember, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are already down Chris Godwin. So, you know, with Chris Godwin out, you're like, okay, the Buccaneers still at least have Mike Evans, Emeka Buka, Jalen McMillan. But then if you're down Jalen McMillan also, then you only have Mike Evans, Emeka Buka. Then you have Ricky Johnson, Sterling Shepard, you know, whoever else, Ryan Miller if he makes the team also. So, you know, the Buccaneers have a very strong wide receiver room. That wide receiver room is going to be as strong if you have 2 of your really star wide receivers, 2 of your big, production wide receivers out. Remember, Jalen McMillan had 8 touchdowns last year as a rookie, so he can produce for this team. So, you know, that was a really scary thing. That was probably the one thing that I really didn't like from Teddy Bridgewater, besides the lack of arm strength. But that's to be expected if you've seen him play throughout his career. But he doesn't have the arm strength, but he has the accuracy. But that ball was pretty much like a hospital ball. It wasn't a good pass by Bridgewater. All right, so let's talk about real quick before we move on to winners and losers. Sterling Shepard. So last week it was the Ryan Miller show, and Ryan Miller had a few good plays in special teams this week, but he didn't really produce as much as he did last week in week number 1 against the Tennessee Titans in the receiving game. But this final wide receiver spot, the Buccaneers, if Chris Godwin starts off on the PUP list, and let's say Jalen McMillan is healthy for week 1, well, you got Mike Evans, you got Emeka Buka, Jalen McMillan, you got Tez Johnson, who is most likely going to make this team. I'll give him pretty high likelihood to make this team. He looks really shifty up there. He's going to produce on special teams. We'll talk about him later on. But then that final 5th spot, if the Buccaneers decide to keep 5, is likely going to be Ryan Miller or Sterling Shepard. I think those would be the top 2 guys. I don't think Trey Palmer really has a chance. He's been a bit injured throughout training camp. But those are going to be the 2 guys. Receiving yardage against the Pittsburgh Steelers, the star at wide receiver was Sterling Shepard pretty early on. He had 3 receptions on 3 targets for 47 yards in total, averaging 15.7 yards per reception. And his longest reception was of 27 yards. So he really stole the show there, and nobody really popped out. Nobody really, showed out too much in the receiving game against the Pittsburgh Steelers. But Sterling Shepard had a solid night for himself. So really, I see that final wide receiver spot being between Ryan Miller and Sterling Shepard. So we'll see how that continues to play out. Let's get to our winners and losers. Bucs fans, want to know how you can help this channel, Fear the Bay, grow and expand? All you have to do is 3 simple things: like, subscribe, and comment. They're quick. They're simple things to do. They're free. And what it does is it helps boost out this content to more
Buccaneers fans like yourself. So when YouTube sees you liking, subscribing, and engaging with the content, they boost this content out to more viewers like yourself. So please, if you can, like, subscribe, and comment. That helps me out a lot. And let's get back to the video. We don't want to miss that. So as far as winners go, I have 5 winners here. You can include Teddy Bridgewater. I just didn't include him because I didn't like that pass that he threw to Jalen McMillan. I consider that, pretty much a hospital and really scary to see the way that Jalen McMillan came down. But in terms of winners, let's start off with the special teams. Let's start off with Riley Dixon. So the Buccaneers, throughout the last, how many years, they can't find their punter for the long term. So Jake Camarda, for example, looked really good in his rookie year, but was never able to get back to that. Was cut last year due to poor performance. The Buccaneers moved on to a few other players also at the punter position. But Riley Dixon, I've said this since I got to see him in, I believe it was, I don't think he kicked day 2, but it was day 2 or day number 3 of training camp. And I saw right away this guy has a booming, big leg. He's out there wearing number 92, and he was asked about that. It's a number that, he came on as a walk-on in college with the single, digit rule where wide receivers and running backs like Bucky Irving could wear the single digits, like 7. Hassan Reddick is wearing number 5. Yaya Diaby's wearing 0. So all those numbers are basically like taking up those single digit numbers. So he's like, I'll take 92. It looks pretty weird for a punter in the NFL, but he's making it work. And Riley Dixon has a big leg. I think the Buccaneers have found their long-term punter. He's been in the league for about 10 years now. Was with the New York Giants, with the Denver Broncos. He's been in a few places in the NFL, but he has a very nice leg, very big leg. He had 8 punts Saturday night. His longest punt was of 63 yards. 2 of them fell inside the 20, and then he averaged 43.6 yards per punt. He looked really nice out there. I think the Buccaneers don't have to worry about kicker. They have their kicker, Chase McLaughlin, and they don't have to worry about their punter also. And Evan Deckers has now had a botch snap. He's looked good at long snapper also. All right, let me get to, there's a undrafted free agent called Javion Farr. He's an undrafted free agent cornerback out of Augustana. So I was like, I don't know where the hell Augustana is. All right, but Augustana is from, it's a school, it's a university in Rock Island, Illinois. So he comes from a small school. The Buccaneers had him out at the rookie minicamp as a tryout player. Didn't get signed then. Buccaneers brought him in August 11th. The game was August 16th. Right away, the Buccaneers also threw him into the joint practice. He was playing one-on-ones and all these things. I believe the advice Todd Bowles gave him was just don't get beat deep. You might get beat, just don't get beat deep, and you have a good day. But he looked good out there. I remember the reports from the joint practice. He looked good in the joint practice. He looked good out there also. For a guy who doesn't know the defense, who's just out there running around, he held his own. He did pretty good for himself. So I was really impressed. He didn't make a splash play, for example. He didn't have, a forced fumble or an interception or anything like that. He also didn't get, beat, badly at all either. So, Javion Farr, really nice to see him out there. Number 11, he was out there for a while. He took a lot of snaps. Let me see if I can get the snap count, numbers here. But so Javion Farr, he took 33 snaps, 53% of the defensive snaps, so really good there. Again, this is a guy who doesn't know the defense. He's just out there running around, and he's holding his own. He's an undrafted free agent rookie. He's holding his own. You can only root for a guy like this, and I hope that he at least makes a practice squad. So I hope he gets on this team somehow. But I really liked him out there. He's just doesn't have the knowledge on defense, but he just knows how to play the cornerback position. So good to see him out there. All right, Kendall Vildor. As I stated, he had the tipped interception, so he tipped it basically up to himself. He catches on the sideline and made sure his feet were in. He was all good there. But again, this is a guy who the Buccaneers brought in to primarily be a special teams player. He's coming from the Detroit Lions. Over the offseason, the Buccaneers lost Tavier Thomas. He went over to the Minnesota Vikings. He was really their special team guy as a defensive back.
They replaced him with Kendall Vildor. And again, I thought Kendall Vildor was just mostly going to be a special teams guy, but he's shown him and Bryce Hall, if you put them out there, if you need them to be out there, you can rely on them. They'll be okay. They'll be able to, not look bad out there like a guy like Tyreek Thunderberg last year or Josh Hayes, when the Buccaneers were really thin at the cornerback position last year and had to throw those guys out. But if the Buccaneers get thin at quarterback position this year, they have Kendall Vildor, Bryce Hall, guys who, and they have, of course, Benjamin Morrison, who's injured right now, but he'll be back likely soon. So it was good to see Kendall Vildor get that interception. Jacob Parrish looked really good. He had back-to-back really good plays. He had a PBU, a pass breakup. The very next play, he's running in. He has a tackle for loss. So it was good to see you there. He's looked really good. He played a lot of outside corner in this second preseason game. He played outside corner a bit last week too. When the regular season starts, he's going to be at the nickel position. He's going to be the Buccaneers starting nickel, and I really like him. He's a smaller guy. Again, he's smaller than the traditional Buccaneers corner that you think about: Carlton Davis, Jamel Dean, Zion McCollum, these long, lengthier guys. But he's a tough, physical corner. He'll come in, he'll hit you. I believe he has 4.35 speed, so he's really good there. He can play tight man coverage. So I really like Jacob Parrish, and I want to see him continue to develop. I said pretty early on, I'm going to stick with this, that Jacob Parrish is going to have a more productive season and a more, just more efficient, a more impactful season for the Buccaneers than Benjamin Morrison. It's not that I don't like Benjamin Morrison. I really liked Benjamin Morrison. But again, he has to compete with Jamel Dean for that starting cornerback 2 position, for that outside corner position. And he's injured right now. So it looks like it's going to be Jamel Dean's job to lose. And lastly, edge rusher Chris Braswell. So Braswell disappointed me last week, but this week he came up with a sack last week, and this week he's working against second, third string offensive linemen. But it was good to see him get a sack this week. He met the quarterback with Christian Izien, who's out there. Christian Izien got hurt with an oblique injury, so we'll see if the severity there. Buccaneers already thin at safety. They lost J.J. Roberts, safety, undrafted free agent. Pewter Report broke that news. So it's really good to see Chris Braswell finally get to the quarterback this week. There was a quote that Todd Bowles had on Chris Braswell that I'll read now. He said, and this is from Todd Bowles talking about Chris Braswell. He said, he's been taking the next step since he got back to training camp. He's playing faster, smarter, doing a lot of little things that go unnoticed. So the Buccaneers still have a lot of confidence in Chris Braswell. Just want to see him continue to develop. He had 1.5 sacks last year, second round pick out of Alabama last year. You just hope that he continues to improve and develop. The Buccaneers are going to need to count on him because of the fact that they lost David Walker, who was going to be a big part of this defense. But you hope Chris Braswell continues to develop, continues to find his way to the quarterback, and be successful and be productive for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So those are our winners and losers. Before we go, though, I do want to talk about this comparison that Rondé Barber had. So Emeka Egbuka, he scored his first preseason NFL touchdown. Like I stated before, you can include him as one of your winners, but he just didn't play enough snaps. That can include him here. But Rondé Barber compared Emeka Egbuka to the Lions wide receiver from Detroit, Amon-Ra St. Brown, who's one of the, he's a top 10 wide receiver. You can argue he's a top 7, top 5 wide receiver, but it was good to see that comparison there. I see him as that Amon-Ra St. Brown or Chris Godwin 2.0, and it's good to have Chris Godwin Jr. as, his mentor, as a guy who's there. Any question he has, Chris Godwin is there. I'm sure Mike Evans is doing the same exact thing, and I know Jalen McMillan has been helping him out a lot too throughout this offseason and training camp and now preseason. So let's get to our 3 headlines. The Buccaneers are kicking off their regular season in just 3 weeks on September 7th. They're going to be on the road against the Atlanta Falcons. That's going to be a fun NFC South division matchup there. I just want to give you guys a quick 2025 Buccaneers season preview, just giving you some of the information that you need to know before week number 1. So we'll go kind of position by position, just tell you some information, some players that Buccaneers brought in, some players that Buccaneers really like, some players who might get cut pretty soon. So we'll start off at the quarterback position. So obviously Baker Mayfield's going to be the quarterback. You do have a competition though at QB2 between Kyle Trask and Teddy Bridgewater, it would appear. Now, before the Bridgewater signing, I hoped that Michael Pratt was going to be able to compete against Kyle Trask, but that's not going to be the case. He's injured with a back injury, and he won't be available to compete with Kyle Trask or Bridgewater for the QB2 position. So, this is going to be tough. Do the Buccaneers decide to keep 2, or they just keep 3? But I don't think they're going to keep 3, because if you keep 3 quarterbacks, then you can't, you might have to lose one of your tight ends, or you have to cut short on wide receiver or another position. So I think they're going to keep 2, but which 2 is going to be? I'm leaning more towards Kyle Trask and maybe Teddy Bridgewater being a practice squad player, but we'll see as we continue. All right, running back, Bucky Irving, phenomenal rookie season off of coming out of Oregon for the Buccaneers. Rashad White was a starter. He lost his job last year to Bucky Irving. Rashad White is currently injured with a groin injury. Didn't play in week number 2 of the preseason against the Pittsburgh Steelers. Probably isn't going to play week 3 against the Buffalo Bills. So he's kind of going to be out of the picture for the remainder of the preseason. But is he going to be healthy enough for the start of the season, week 1 against the Atlanta Falcons? Or is a guy like Sean Tucker, who showed out week 1 against the Tennessee Titans in the preseason? The Buccaneers offensive line struggled week 2, didn't produce much, 24 rushing carries, 40 plus yards, not much there. But Sean Tucker is a guy who, when you give him the ball, as Todd Bowles says, he can naturally find those holes. You just give him a chance. Todd Bowles has been calling for this, and I have too. Give Sean Tucker an opportunity, find a way to get him on the field. If you do that, he's going to produce for you. The Buccaneers also like Josh Williams. He's the undrafted free agent out of LSU. When Jason Light was on the Peter Report podcast, he said Josh Williams is going to be one of those running backs who makes people, who turns people's heads, because he's going to be pretty impressive. He got a chance to play last night. He looked good, but, all the running backs weren't too impressive because of the run blocking and the defensive line of the Pittsburgh Steelers, making that run, the whole running effort look bad for the Buccaneers. So at wide receiver, of course, you have the ageless wonder. You have Mike Evans, who's trying to get another 1,000-yard season. He's healthy. He's not going to play throughout the preseason, trying to keep him safe. Chris Godwin, there's no real answer. His ETA of when he's going to be ready to come back from his dislocated ankle injury. So we got to keep an eye on that. Maybe he starts off on the PUP list. Maybe he doesn't. We really don't know the answer with Chris Godwin. Jalen McMillan, so he looks really good, but had that scary injury against the Steelers, went down his back neck, wearing a neck brace, sprained neck, according to Joe Bucs fans. So, he's a head scratcher there. Is he going to be healthy? Because hopefully he's healthy, because the Buccaneers have Mike Evans on the outside. They're going to have Jalen McMillan on the outside too, and they're going to have Emeka Buka played the first round draft pick out of Ohio State, played that inside Chris Godwin slot row position. Trey Palmer has kind of been, a forgotten man in this wide receiver room. He has a lot of speed. He's a speed demon, but hasn't produced for the Buccaneers, has been injured often here in the offseason and throughout training camp and the preseason. Sterling Shepard, he's a guy who's competing for that final wide receiver position. So you have Mike Evans, Chris Godwin. I don't think he's going to be in the picture, but we'll see. But if Chris Godwin's not in the picture, you have Mike Evans, Emeka Buka, Jalen McMillan. You have Tez Johnson, 7th round pick out of Oregon, who looks really shifty, looks really good. And then you also have Sterling Shepard and Ryan Miller fighting for that final wide receiver 5 position. Tight end position is exactly the same as it was last year. You have Cade Otton, you have Payne Durham, you have Keith, and Devin Cope. Devin Cope has been a guy who I liked throughout training camp. I want to see, can he get that tight end 2 position, surpass Payne Durham for that tight end 2 position. At left tackle, Tristan Wirfs out with a right knee injury. How long is going to be out for? Is going to miss the first 4 games. Is going to be able to come back before the first 4 games. Remember, that 3rd game is against the Philadelphia Eagles. The 3rd game is against the New York Jets. And then they have the Philadelphia Eagles week 4. Week 5 is the Seattle Seahawks. With Tristan Wirfs out, who's one of the best, if not the best, left tackle in the league. And I think when you just look on offense, Mike Evans, phenomenal, but right now, who's the best offensive player on this team? I would argue Tristan Wirfs is probably the best offensive player in total on this team. Not to diminish anything that Mike Evans has ever done. He's going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer, but Tristan Wirfs is so good. He's the best left tackle in the league. He was amazing right tackle, if not the best right tackle in the league, but now shifted over. He's the best left tackle in the league also. Charlie Heck is going to fill in for him. You just hope the Buccaneers can survive with Charlie Heck, who's a big guy, just doesn't use his strength properly. So you want to see how that's all going to play out there. Ben Bredesen, the Buccaneers signed him again in the offseason, re-signed him, brought him back. Graham Barton struggled a bit against Vita Vea in training camp. I think that's going to happen. Vita Vea is such a phenomenal nose tackle, one of the best defensive linemen in the league. So you're going to have those growing pains. But I think Graham Barton throughout the season, is slowly going to continue to improve and become more of a vocal leader on this offense. Cody Mauch continuing to be the right guard for the Buccaneers, and Luke Gedeke continues to be the right tackle. He's really good also. The Buccaneers have 2 bookend tackles when Wirfs and Gedeke are out there. You just hope Gedeke can stay healthy. He's had the concussion issue in the past. He's wearing that Guardian cap now. Just hope he stays healthy. He's entering his final year of his rookie contract, so he'll be a guy who's looking to get a payday at some point before the season, during the season, or after the season. All right, so let's go down to defense. So the Buccaneers have a scary front four when you think about Hassan Reddick, Yaya Diaby. Hassan Reddick brought in this offseason, played last year with the New York Jets, didn't produce at the level he normally does, but he's going to be fun to watch. Opposite side, you have Yaya Diaby out there. You hope he continues to improve. He's a physical specimen. If you created a edge rusher in a lab, he'll look like Yaya Diaby, but he needs to continue to produce, continue to gain, good sack production. You hope he can get 10, 11, 12 sacks this year. We'll see how that all plays out. Inside, internally, you have Kalijah Kancey and you have Vita Vea. When the Buccaneers go 3-4, they have Vita Vea, Kalijah Kancey, and Logan Hall. Yaya Diaby, Hassan Reddick on the outside. In the inside, Savassi Dennis and Levante David. Levante David, who's possibly entering the final year here in Tampa. You hope he can continue to play forever, but at some point he's going to hang up the cleats. And I hope that the Buccaneers have a winning season. If this is his last season, continue to win, and he gets to experience a good final season. But we'll see. Every year is kind of, he waits until, the offseason, the end of the year to decide, do I want to continue or do I not want to continue? The Buccaneers are signing him through, these back-to-back one-year deals. It all comes down to, does Levante David want to continue playing or not? He's a guy who, once he retires, if he wants to stick around football, I would like to see the Buccaneers try to keep him somehow, have him as a coach, find a way to keep him, around this team, because I think his football intelligence is second to none. I think he's a really, really smart player, and if he's been able to have all the success he's had throughout the NFL, throughout his career, because of that football intelligence and also his physical ability. Outside corners, we have Zion McCollum, who is entering his final year of his rookie deal. Also, you have Jamel Dean, who should have been competing with Benjamin Morrison, but Benjamin Morrison is a bit hurt right now. But we'll see what happens when the season, really comes about and they're able to, if Jamel Dean gets hurt, Benjamin Morrison steps in. It's going to lose his job. Is Benjamin Morrison going to be able to play as good as, we envision that he can be, as good as he can be, a second-round draft pick. Jamel Dean, often injured. That's been the biggest thing throughout his career. Drops those interceptions also. So we'll see, throughout the year, is it going to be the Benjamin Morrison show outside corner or Jamel Dean? It's going to start off as Jamel Dean, but we'll see as time continues. At safety, the Buccaneers are really thin at safety now. This has been a concern of mine throughout the offseason. Now it's really thin. As Peter Report broke, undrafted free agent J.J. Roberts is out for the year. He's going to be headed to IR. You have Christian Izien, who is, very versatile player, can play nickel, you can even put him at outside corner. He's primarily a safety. He's out with an oblique injury. We don't know the severity of that injury also. So now you have guys like Kayvon Merriweather, J.J. Roberts, Rashad Wisdom. I'm sorry, not J.J. Roberts, but Kayvon Merriweather, Rashad Wisdom, and Shiloh Sanders competing to be that fourth safety at the Buccaneers 5. I don't really know, but to competing for that possible final safety position. I think Kayvon Merriweather has a really good chance. I know Todd Bowles likes him a lot. I don't think Shiloh Sanders or Rashad Wisdom make the team, but we'll see as time progresses. And at nickel corner, the third-round draft pick out of K-State, Jacob Parrish, who has looked really good, impressed all throughout training camp, and now in the preseason played really tight coverage. The Buccaneers can have him. They explained this pretty early on, the same night they drafted him. He's a smaller guy, but they're not scared to put him at outside corner too. So he's a guy who can play outside corner, can play inside at the nickel. So really, really nice to see there. At the kicker position, Chase McLaughlin, consistent, really nice. He's a good kicker for the Buccaneers. Riley Dixon, I think the Buccaneers have solved their big question mark at the punter position. Riley Dixon, the veteran, came in this offseason. I think he's going to look really good there. At kick returner, we'll see who they put out there. It's going to be Sean Tucker. It's going to be somebody else. But at punt returner, I'm pretty sure it's going to be Tez Johnson. Tez Johnson is going to win the starting punt returner job. Evan Deckers as the long snapper. So that's kind of a quick preview of what we're looking forward to this season. The Buccaneers start off the year against the Atlanta Falcons. It's going to be an NFC South rivalry game to kick that off. I think the Buccaneers can go 11-6, 12-5, make a pretty deep run. I do think they are a Super Bowl contender also, but it's going to come down to the injury bug. Are they going to be able to stay healthy in key positions? Their depth is already getting tested, for example, at safety. It's getting tested a bit at wide receiver too, Chris Godwin and now Jalen McMillan with that neck brace, that big scare there. So if the Buccaneers can stay healthy, I think they are a Super Bowl contender, and I think that's the biggest thing. Can they stay healthy? Can they stay healthy? Can they have their starting, their core guys out there for the majority of the season? And if they're not healthy in the beginning of the season or in the middle of the season, hopefully they're healthy towards the end of the season as they enter into the playoffs. You just need to get in, and then anything can happen after that. So let's get to our next headline. The Dallas Cowboys have a holdout scenario on their hands with superstar pass rusher Micah Parsons, one of the best young pass rushers, one of the best defensive players in the league. So he wants a huge deal. He wants a mega deal. And the Cowboys, they don't want to give it to him right now. I'll explain the situation as we go. But let's look at his sack production throughout the year. His rookie season, he had 13 sacks coming out of Penn State. 2022, he had 13 and a half sacks. 2023, he had 14 sacks. Last year, he had 12 sacks. So he can produce double digits for you. He had 52 and a half sacks throughout the entirety of his career. He can produce. He can get to the quarterback. He's a quick, versatile player, really a game changer, a huge nightmare for offenses. Now, he wants a new contract. What would that contract look like? So Myles Garrett recently this offseason, he said, he's done with the Browns. He wanted a trade out of the organization. Didn't envision, the Browns being in a position where they could win. They offer him this huge deal. He's like, okay, you know what? I'll stay with the Browns. They offered him a 4-year, $160 million deal. He's making $40 million on average. 123.5 of that is guaranteed. He has a no trade clause also in his contract. Huge deal. TJ Watt, also same situation. He was going to be a holdout player, trying to get a big deal, trying to get a mega deal also, just like Myles Garrett and just like Micah Parsons is now. He got a 3-year contract for $123 million. $108 million of that is guaranteed. His average annual value is $41 million. So when you're thinking about what if we trade for Micah Parsons, I'm going to talk about this wild trade scenario here in a moment. If the Buccaneers trade for Micah Parsons, you're looking at, signing him to a 41 plus million dollar, average, yearly average deal here. So let's go to the wild trade proposal presented by Mike Tannenbaum of ESPN. So wild, I would say absolutely no to this. If Jerry Jones, if I was the GM of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and Jerry Jones calls me and he offers me this trade proposal, I'm going to slam the phone right there and then. So in this trade proposal, the Buccaneers get Micah Parsons, all right, and presumably they would have a contract, in mind and already set up if you're going to trade as much as, they would trade up in this proposal. But Mike Tannenbaum has the Buccaneers giving up a first round pick. So is it this year, next year? Who cares? But it's a first round pick. Bucky Irving, who's arguably one of the, he's a top 5. We'll see if he continues to develop, but I think he's a top 5, top 7 running back in this league. And Vita Vea, one of the best nose tackles and defensive linemen in the league also. So the Buccaneers will be giving up a lot to take in Micah Parsons. And if you're making a move like this, the reason you're making a move is because, you think you're going to be a Super Bowl contender. You think that this is the final piece we need. We're going to be there once we trade for this player. We're going to get to the Super Bowl if we stay healthy and we do what we're supposed to be doing. But if you're giving up Bucky Irving, you're giving up Vita Vea, you're just causing holes. Now, the Buccaneers have a deep running back room. The defensive line, if Vita Vea goes down, Greg Gaines is basically his backup. You have Greg Gaines starting for the majority of the season if you do this, or the entire season. The Buccaneers will be giving up way too much, in my opinion, to trade for Micah Parsons. What would I be comfortable with? Now, I don't think this is going to happen at all, but what would I be comfortable with? I'll give up a first round pick this year and a second, third round pick next year, okay? But a first, Bucky Irving and Vita Vea is way too much. I think the most likely scenario is he's just going to get re-signed he's going to get extended by the Dallas Cowboys. Jerry Jones always, being, he's just throwing spice into the mix here. And he talked about it recently. So the Dallas Cowboys, America's team, they're a soap opera, they're America's team. Everybody's always talking about them. They're always in the headlines. But when people stop talking about the Dallas Cowboys, that's when he spices things up. And the way he spiced things up was explaining, if we sign, Micah Parsons to this big deal that he's looking for, well, we already signed, for example, Dak Prescott last year. He's making $60 million a year, blah, blah, blah. And he was hurt for the majority of last year, So, if we sign these guys, are they even going to be out there? Are they even going to play, blah, blah, blah. So this is just Jerry Jones putting a little spice into the mix here, causing a little bit of controversy. He stated, the Cowboys are a soap opera 365 days a year, and he's absolutely correct with that. When it gets slow, I stir it up. There is controversy. That controversy is good stuff in terms of keeping and having people's attention. So I think the thing that's going on here is Jerry Jones is creating controversy to have the Dallas Cowboys continue to be in the headline, continue to make revenue, jersey sales, all these things, the team getting more attention. And what's going to happen is Micah Parsons is going to stay with the Dallas Cowboys, going to get extended. But again, Mike Tannenbaum, I don't know what he's thinking here. Because again, if the Buccaneers are trying to make this move to become a Super Bowl contender, I already believe they are. But if they're trying to get that final piece that they believe they need, giving up Bucky Irving, giving up Vita Vea, you're causing holes in other areas that aren't going to let you get to the Super Bowl. So I don't like this trade proposal at all. It's not going to happen. Again, if Jerry Jones was to call me, I'm the Bucs GM, I'm Jason Licht, he calls me and offers me that deal, I'm going to hang up the phone right there. That won't be something that I say yes to. Let's get to our next headline. Jason Licht has been the Tampa Bay Buccaneers general manager since 2014. It's been over a decade now. I don't think he ever gets the recognition that he deserves. I don't think when people talk about, who's the best general manager in the league, they oftentimes don't include his name. They include, the top of most people's list is Howie Roseman of the Philadelphia Eagles, and deservedly so. Howie Roseman's coming off of a Super Bowl victory against the Kansas City Chiefs. But I don't think Jason Licht ever gets the recognition and the love from a national, viewpoint, a standpoint that he probably should. When you think about, even the Super Bowl 55, second in team history that Tampa Bay Buccaneers won, a lot of people credit that victory to Tom Brady. But, Tom Brady is the GOAT, not taking anything away from him. Of course, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers wouldn't have won if it wasn't for Tom Brady. But Jason Licht, he's the guy who built this team. If it wasn't for Jason Licht building the team that he built, Tom Brady wouldn't have even came to Tampa. You think about guys like Mike Evans that he had drafted, Chris Godwin, Ali Marpet at the time. Levante David was already on defense. In that draft class, 2020, the Buccaneers drafted Tristan Wirfs and also Antoine Winfield Jr., two superstars still on this roster today. Two guys who are one of the best, if not the best, at their positions, their respective positions. But recently, Dan Pompei, senior writer for The Atlantic, got the opportunity to sit down with Jason Licht. Jason Licht kind of had like a tell-all. He was just talking about some of the past mistakes that he made as general manager from 2014, really to, letting go and releasing Devin White or moving on from him. So in 2014, the Buccaneers had, this is Jason Licht's first year, and the Buccaneers are coming off of, a bad year, and they were bad in 2014 also. Their 2014 year led to the first overall pick in 2015, which ended up being Jameis Winston, but the Buccaneers had moved on from Mark Dominic, had brought in Jason Licht as the general manager, and Jason Licht, seeing all the holes that the Buccaneers had on the roster, he decided to spend a bit in the free agency period. If you remember, he brought in guys like cornerback Autron Werner from the Tennessee Titans, also two signings from the Cincinnati Bengals. You had offensive tackle Anthony Collins and defensive end Michael Johnson. So, both of these guys didn't work out, Anthony Collins and Michael Johnson, and he explained that the reason why these guys, if you ever hear Jason Licht talk about past mistakes, most of the times he explains that the past mistakes, the reason why players didn't work out is because of the neck up. He's talking about, the person that they are. In this case, Anthony Collins and Michael Johnson, he believes it didn't work out because of passion. He says, I would say they had a passion problem, Light says. So the Buccaneers over the past few years have adopted a new mantra when they're scouting players during the pre-draft visit, when they're talking to players, these one-on-one pre-draft visits, these interviews that they're having, when they're signing players. They're looking for players that are that guy. I am that man. I am that guy. I'm that man. And in their war room, the Buccaneers have a silhouette of Levante David in the war room. And it's just, Levante David is a prototype. He's the guy that you're looking for whenever you're bringing in a player. He's a team first guy. He has high character, high football intelligence, is always going to be an effort guy. He's always going to look out for his teammates and have his teammates back. Anthony Collins and Michael Johnson didn't have that. They weren't that guy. They weren't that man. It comes down to passion with those two guys. Jason Licht also in this story with The Atlantic, he explained Austin Seferian-Jenkins. You remember he was a tight end out of the University of Washington. We talked about last week because we recently learned that if quarterback Teddy Bridgewater, if he had fallen a bit more, if you remember, he was the 32nd overall pick in the first round, but if he had fallen a bit more into the second round, the Buccaneers were selected at pick 38 overall, and if he was there, the Buccaneers were likely going to draft him over Austin Seferian-Jenkins. So we wouldn't have gotten the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, if you remember, all 6'5 plus. Austin Seferian-Jenkins at the tight end position. On the outside, he had Mike Evans and he had Vincent Jackson. It just never worked out. ASJ he got cut at the beginning of the third season due to his DUI and his arrest. But he regrettably chose Austin Seferian-Jenkins. He wouldn't have selected him knowing the information he knows now. Quarterback Vernon Hargreaves III, one of the maybe swaggiest cornerbacks in Tampa Bay Buccaneers history. He didn't work out with the Buccaneers also. If you remember, the Buccaneers, they drafted him in the first round, 2016, from the University of Florida. Buccaneers also brought in free agency Brent Grimes to mentor and to also be another outside corner. So this wasn't the long, lengthy prototype like the Buccaneers like now at corner, with the exception of Jacob Parrish. These were two smaller, really athletic corners. If you remember the days when Brent Grimes would go up against Megatron, Calvin Johnson, when Grimes was with the Dolphins and Megatron was with the Lions, really athletic guy. But Vernon Hargreaves didn't work out with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Now, this one comes down to effort revealed by Jason Licht. If you remember those final few games with the Buccaneers, effort was, obviously something that stood out. A lack of effort from Vernon Hargreaves III, the complete opposite from a guy like Antoine Winfield Jr., who I named Mr. Hustle, Mr. Effort. He's always giving, 110% on every single play. All right, so Vernon Hargreaves was the team's first-round pick in 2016. He coasted through his first 3 seasons before Bruce Arians benched him for what the coach said was a lack of hustle. The Buccaneers released him 2 days later. Jason Licht says he just didn't want to be a part of a team. So he wasn't a team-first guy. He didn't want to be a part of a team. He was just caring about me, who's being an individual rather than a teammate on a team. So hustle and all those things were, a big thorn in his side, and he gets released from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers after that. Ended up playing with the Cincinnati Bengals also in his career, and I believe the Houston Texans as well. All right, so Deshaun Jackson. Okay, so Deshaun Jackson, he was, the splashy signing. He's one of the best deep threats when you talk about NFL wide receivers in NFL history. Jason Licht brings him in 2017, but Jameis Winston, quarterback at the time, can never really hit him deep. So they were never really in sync. He could never really hit him deep as often as he would want them to connect. When Ryan Fitzpatrick eventually came in, you remember he was able to hit him deep. Deshaun Jackson had the best game of his career once Fitzpatrick was in as the QB1 for the Buccaneers, but was not a team-first player by any means. So the story says he didn't blend with the quarterback or his coaches, and the waves he created didn't justify the production. The mean now, this is Jason Licht talking, the mean now would never sign Deshaun Jackson, says Licht, who traded him after 2 years. So just didn't work out. I believe there was an outburst. This is from reports I read, years ago at this point. But there was an outburst in the locker room that he had. I feel like the locker room at the time too, in 2017, 2018, the year that Jameis Winston was suspended for his first 3 games, there was a bit of a division between Fitzpatrick and Jameis Winston, largely probably because of Deshaun Jackson seeing, hey, I get the ball more when Ryan Fitzpatrick is my QB1. All right, now let's get to the final player that I want to highlight that Jason Licht talked about, and it's inside linebacker Devin White out of LSU. If you remember, so during the pre-draft visit, I believe he was on, he was an ESPN with Stephen A. Smith, and he said in 5 years, I'm looking forward to my $100 million contract, something to that extent. So he was looking for a big payday, once his rookie deal ended, and he's able to get that big payday. So the story here written by Dan Pape says, in hindsight, Light believes that he was fooled in 2019 when he chose linebacker Devin White in the first round. White was a starter for the better part of 5 years for the Bucs, but was eventually let go. He's with the 3rd team since. Remember, he went to the Philadelphia Eagles. If you remember at the time too, Devin White on social media, he reposted on Instagram in his stories a picture of him in full Philadelphia Eagles uniform, signaling, of course, that he wanted to go to the Eagles. He went to the Eagles eventually with Vic Fangio as a defensive coordinator. Didn't work out there. He went on to, I believe, the Houston Texans, and now he's with the Las Vegas Raiders with former Buccaneers assistant general manager John Spytek there, who I really like. Let's continue here. This is Jason Light talking, knowing what I know now, he would have been off my board, Light says. It was too much about him. By the time he chose White, Light had been with the Bucs 5 years and had a record of 27-53. He hadn't yet gone under, but could feel the pull of the underflow. So, he doesn't have a good record. He's 27-53. He feels like, the Buccaneers at the time had a hole at inside linebacker, next to Lavonte David. He feels like bringing in, Devin White is going to help him out. But now he sees let's not diminish Devin White's, importance. He was really important for this defense in that Super Bowl year. But just eventually he was too consumed by the money, the contract in the future, that it clouded his game, it clouded his vision. I know Ndamukong Suh, when this story went out there and it became viral on social media, Ndamukong Suh posted a bunch of eyeballs on Instagram, I believe. It's like, he wasn't dispelling, he wasn't going against, Jason Light's word. He's pretty much confirming that Devin White was an issue in the locker room. So again, the Buccaneers have now adopted this I am that man mantra, and if Jason Licht was the general manager who was back then, he wouldn't have made these mistakes with guys like Austin Seferian-Jenkins, Vernon Hargreaves, and Devin White, and Deshaun Jackson, of course. Really interesting to see a general manager be so open and talk about his past mistakes. So it was cool to see that. Thank you guys for watching. Bucs fans, thank you guys for watching. I've said this before, but you guys are the heartbeat of Fear the Bay. I couldn't have done this without you guys. Please, if you haven't done so already, please like and subscribe. Leave a comment as well if you would like. Tell me where you guys listening, where you guys watching this video from. We have some big news that I can't break now, but I'll break in the near future. This show is going to be, expanding a bit. I'll explain that in the future, but I'm really excited for the opportunities that this show and your support has provided me. So I'm really excited to talk about that in the near future. I'll let you guys know what the big news is, when we get closer to the time of revealing that. But again, guys, please like, subscribe, and thank you guys for watching. You guys, again, are the heartbeat of Fear the Bay. I'm your host, Dana Morales, signing out. Thank you guys.